Hey everyone, it's Blake. Welcome in to episode number 1 of our WWF 1992 save here in TEW 2020. I told you guys I've been wanting to do a retro one to kind of join the rotation with the current WWE Real World one we have going on, the TCW one from the C-Verse, and if you're watching this later down the road, there's probably other saves that we have going here on the channel, but I always like to have a retro one kind of in the rotation. We did it a little bit with the WCW 1998 one. We only got like 15 episodes in or something. It just, I don't know, 1998 was just not kind of the save we were looking for. It felt like we were sort of building towards the same things that happened in reality. But I think 1992 is very interesting. And one of the reasons I decided to go with this is because this is considered one of the better mods out there for TEW 2020 in terms of the real world mods and kind of looking at, different years in the wrestling world. And everywhere I've looked, I mean, I've had this kind of as a database. I've played around with it a little bit, but everybody really seems to enjoy this one. And I'm excited to kind of take a look at sort of where things stand here in January of 1992, because this was an interesting year. This was kind of that, I don't know, like 91, we're coming off of kind of, Hulkamania running wild in the late 80s and 1990, and then things start to 91, you sort of get things a little bit different. 92, they get a little more different, and then we know like 93, 94, 95, like WWF just changes so much, once Hogan eventually leaves, and it just, it's so different. And so I think this is an interesting starting point, because this is kind of the year in 1992 before everything just really changes considerably in the WWF. And so you got a lot of interesting mix of talent and workers and all that. So we're going to give this one a try. I think this should be a lot of fun. But as always, we're going to kind of take a look at different things, where things stand here in the intro episode to kind of show you where we're at in this particular save. So no surprise. I mean, we're a big company doing really well across the world here. We're currently at big. To get to large, we need to achieve big size and also 71 throughout either Canada or Mexico, which I don't think will be that hard to do. Coming up, they're both about the same. So, yeah, you can kind of see where we're at size-wise on that. Looking at sort of the state of the title situation, this is another reason why I decided to go not just with 1992, but also decided to go with the WWF. Because, of course, if you remember, back in this period, this is where the title was vacated. Jack Tunney decided to vacate the title after all the shenanigans that had happened. Hogan and The Undertaker had the two matches. They had them at this Tuesday in Texas and Survivor Series. And shenanigans abound, of course, at the time, because Flair had come in and all of that. So Hogan gets stripped of the title. Of course, they'd go on to make the Royal Rumble for the title. We'll talk more about that and whether we're actually going to do that. You'll see how it'll play out on our next show. But yeah, so you've got a vacant heavyweight championship here, and I think that's a fun starting point, because it is kind of a blank slate here, because you don't have any of the title tied to anyone. Of course, we will kind of use some of the stories that we're playing into it with Hogan, The Undertaker, Flair, all that, but you don't have a champion. And so I think that's interesting to start off with. Of course, your Intercontinental Champion at the moment, Bret the Hitman Hart. And so that's kind of another, I think, that's attractive about starting this 1992 save, is that you have Bret, you have Shawn, you have all those guys right before they really start to take off, and become the main event type players that they would become over the next couple years. So that's another interesting aspect of things. Of course, the King of the Ring was still around at this point, and I know it was kind of, up and down a little bit, King of the Ring, all that, but I like the King of the Ring, so we'll probably keep that around. I think that's kind of a fun idea to work with. The Royal Rumble, of course, I'll probably change this to more of a retro Royal Rumble logo here, but Hogan won back-to-back Rumbles at this point, maybe going for the three-peat in the 1992 Royal Rumble. We'll find out. But, yeah, so that's obviously there. And then the tag team champions are none other than LOD here, the Legion of Doom, Animal and Hawk. They are your tag team champions at the moment. So, yeah, it's a pretty fun group here when you look at it. Just, again, look at your champions, and also knowing that the heavyweight championship is currently vacant. So that's kind of an interesting note to look out for there. Looking at our storylines to start off with here, as always, sometimes I will maybe keep a couple of these, but probably quite a few we will not sort of carry over just from reality. But there may be some, but of course, this is, again, kind of one of those interesting periods where you had the Bushwhackers brawling it out with the Beverly Brothers. Of course, the Ric Flair situation with the WWF title. We mentioned that. The Intercontinental Championship, you had the feud, kind of everything intertwined between Brett, Piper, and the Mountie. Jimmy Hart's and sort of his clients and everything. Of course, you had the natural disasters, earthquake and typhoon at this time. You had sort of the team that was brewing with Ted DiBiase and IRS. So, again, it was just kind of what an interesting period this was for WWE at the time. Sid's involved. You had the just incredible feud in 1991. One of the most memorable ever. Jake Roberts and Randy Savage. Of course, the snake bite that happened. So there's a lot of fun stuff we can play off of with these feuds. Like I said, they won't all carry over into our specific, kind of storylines and everything we build. But there's some stuff we can have some fun with right now as it stands. But I guess what we can look at, like our backstage situation, at 100, we know kind of the usual suspects at times. Sean, considered a mildly negative influence here. Brutus the Barber Beefcake, mildly negative. We got Herc here, Hercules, the Nasty Boys, all that. So that's worth looking at. This is always the interesting section. Our franchise players, no surprise, right? 4 guys in particular, and they've kind of been the franchise players at various points here over the past several years in WWF lore. But, of course, Ric Flair has joined the roster now, so it's Flair, it's Hogan, it's Savage, and the Ultimate Warrior, of course, who had his big title run a couple years ago. Then, so, yeah, looking at it from that standpoint, next big things, I'll be honest, I looked at this and I'm like, what are the Nasty Boys doing on here? But we probably don't have many things in store for a Brian Knobbs or Jerry Sags singles run, but at least they're here. And, of course, The Undertaker, no surprise to see him here as the next big thing. The Big Boss Man, think about this at the time. Big Boss Man was 28 at the time. So, it's understandable why Ray Traylor here is considered one of the next big things. And this, Hot Prospects, what a group this is. I mean, this is a tremendous group of hot prospects. And again, one of the reasons I decided to do this particular series is because you've got Sean. You've got the British Bulldog. Even Pat Tanaka. Like, Tanaka I always enjoyed Pat Tanaka's work. Of course, the Orient Express and the Rockers had, I thought, one of the best tag team matches in WWF pay-per-view history when they had that match at the Royal Rumble. So those guys, even Tanaka's here. Of course, Owen Hart's here, only 26 at the time. Earthquake, another guy that I think just does not get enough credit for what he was able to do over the years. John Tenta, tremendous. So we got a lot of talent to work with here. Talk the talk. Again, usual suspects here. You got Piper, you got Heenan. I also love the idea of just having Bobby Heenan as a manager. Bobby Heenan, the greatest of all time. I love having this guy as a manager. It's going to be so fun to kind of come up with different storylines and having Heenan involved. That will be a lot of fun to play around with. Showstoppers, again, you kind of see all the good workers here. Ring generals, don't forget, we got the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase as well. Mr. Perfect, who is currently out with a back injury, and I think he's out for quite a bit. I want to say maybe 8 months to a year or something like that. We can look at it quickly here. Yeah, so Perfect's going to be out 8 months. Of course, he had a back thing going on. Perfect. Someone else I've always been very high on. So once he makes his return, look out for Mr. Perfect. All right, so who's hot? Kind of, again, your usual suspects here. Although we had Tatanka having a lot of momentum at this point, too. So 26 at the time was Tatanka in this one. Jake the Snake's there. Who's not? No one. So great place to start in terms of all of that. And, we can look at our tag team situation here. Some of these, you got Haku and the Barbarian, Money Inc., as we said earlier. The Orient Express, very underrated tag team. My opinion, the Beverly Brothers, the Bushwhackers, the Legion of Doom, the Nasty Boys, the Natural Disasters, and the New Foundation. That's a pretty solid group of tag teams there. There's a lot we can do with the tag team division, I think, here in the WWF. But, so we look at it from that standpoint. We look at our finances, nothing to worry about, $12.5 million here as it stands right now. Our event schedule. Now, this is another thing that I find very appealing. And it may actually surprise you guys a little bit if you watched all the other saves, because it seems like in every other save I do, I have to at least have 2 TV shows every single week, right? Come on. I got to book 2 shows every week. No. So I know the way it sits right now. We have like Primetime Wrestling, the 2-hour B show, Wrestling Challenge, of course, another B show during this era, and Superstars of Wrestling, our main A show, held, it's only a 1-hour show, right? And we tape 3 episodes at a time. So my guess is what I wind up doing is probably cutting one of these B shows. I really love the nostalgia of Primetime Wrestling. I still think it holds up as one of the best, wrestling TV shows ever, mainly because of Gorilla and Bobby the Brain Heenan. But, I don't think I'm going to be booking a 2-hour B show every week. And so we will probably cut some of these. Maybe we'll keep Primetime Wrestling, move it to an hour. But again, it will not be part of kind of the series. I'll just kind of give you guys an update on the B shows and that kind of stuff. I like to just move along in the series. But I think just having one A show that is really not even that lengthy, like we're not going to extend this thing to 2 hours. So a 1 hour A show, I think, is very fascinating to me because we don't have to juggle 83 storylines. We don't have to do any of that. And we can kind of use the schedule as is, where, look, you've got the 4 big events: Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series. But you've got the Saturday night's main events in between there. So I like the idea of just building up stuff on Superstars of Wrestling every single week and then just kind of paying it off at all these different big shows and not having a pay-per-view every month, not having a big show to do every month. That's the old school, fan in me. I like that kind of style to be able to sort of put it all out there, do a lot of big stuff on the television shows and, build up the even bigger stuff for the pay-per-view events. So I really love the schedule. I really do. Like all this stuff I see down here, look, eventually when we get into the mid-90s or so in this series, yeah, we'll certainly have some ideas to work with, and we will eventually bring Monday Night Raw into it. And the plan is I want to kind of bring that in as soon as it came in reality, of course, in 93. So, we're still a little ways away from that, but I do eventually want to get there with Monday Night Raw and launch it in 1993 like it did in reality. So that's something else we kind of have on the horizon. And at that point, that will probably replace Superstars of Wrestling, and we'll talk more about maybe what that could look like, even though they kind of work together back in the day. But yeah, so that's the event schedule. I think is very fascinating. And again, because it's only going to be a 1 hour show, yeah, we're going to pick and choose who we're featuring and who we're not. All this other stuff, we're not going to have 83 different angles going at the same time like we kind of do on the branded shows that I do for the other save. So yeah, I'm excited about that. I think there's a lot of fun that can be had with that. Before we just quickly look at kind of the structure of the roster, Company Wars, of course, WCW is number 2. And I'll be honest, I really like WCW's roster in this period. I almost went with WCW instead of WWF, but still, there's more familiarity, even though I think WCW like 92-ish, like 93, very underrated, I think. If you go back and watch some of the stuff WCW was doing in this time period, I really enjoyed it. So, and it'll probably make me nostalgic to where I will go back and rewatch some of the stuff now. So, I just really enjoyed WCW in 1992, early 90s. I mean, there were some rough patches, but I think a bit underrated. You had some good stuff. I mean, Steamboat, Rick Rude, all those guys. And, of course, the Sting Invader stuff. Like, there was so much kind of stuff that they were able to build on during that. But I really like it. I mean, you see here just kind of the roster that they put together at this point. A lot of, top-tier stars up here. And, hey, could we bring some of those guys to the WWF? We'll find out if that's going to happen. So, WCW number 2, no surprise there. New Japan 3. Again, you've kind of got a very star-studded lineup here for New Japan, too, when you look at kind of where all these guys were kind of at this point in their career. Of course, Inoki's there, Fujinami, Riki Shoshu's there, Masahiro Chono. So, again, you just think about look how young these guys are. It's incredible. 1992, right? Keiji Muto's there. So, yeah, New Japan, pretty loaded roster there for them as well. CMLL, 4th on the mix here. So, yeah, I mean, another company that just had a lot of future kind of legendary stars here kind of in that. There's a Conan, if you want the old school look there for Conan. There he is. So, yeah, but there's kind of the nature of things. Not a lot of competition necessarily, except for WCW. They're in an interesting spot. But, yeah, I think this is kind of fun to look at with where things stand on this. So, all right, the product itself, I mean, again, it's, you kind of know what to expect here with the product. It's the classic sports entertainment. We won't change it all that much. But, again, you will see some things I do here booking-wise that will be much more fit for the era, and we're really going to try to lean into booking like you saw in this era, using, again, the television shows, a lot of different stuff like that, and you'll see what I'm talking about when we do our first couple of shows. But, all right, roster-wise, let's do some filtering here to kind of give you an idea of who all that we do have available here on this roster. Again, the big 4, pretty clear. The major stars, Hogan, Savage, Flair, Ultimate Warrior, no surprise there in terms of all of those guys. Star-wise, you've got $1 Million Man, of course, is there. Sergeant Slaughter still, in this period coming off the championship run the year before. Sid's there. I think Sid's an interesting one. Of course, Taker's there. Only 26 at the time. Again, wild, isn't it? All right, so well-known, got a good group here, and that's the ones I was talking about earlier. These are the ones that I find very intriguing, where you got a 28-year-old boss man. Of course, you got Brett, who's 34. You got Earthquake. You got Jake the Snake still there. Of course, Lord Alfred Hayes is still there. Mr. Perfect, as we said, out with the injury. Roddy Piper still there at the time. That's just another kind of group that you look at here. Recognizable. Assume that's where everybody else is at. But you kind of skim the list. We've already talked about some of the tag teams and such, but Brutus the Barber is out, I think, for a year. So Brutus, that was, I don't know, I think he's out like a year or something like that after the injury. You guys know what I'm talking about. Of course, you got guys like Crush is there. We talked about it. Hacksaw Jim Duggan's there. Then you got some of those guys that probably are kind of at this point in their career, like a Greg the Hammer Valentine, who's getting a little bit older at this point, but still a solid worker that we can use to get good matches out of. Jim Neidhart's there. Snuka, another one of those guys who's just getting on the older side, but he's someone we could probably popularity put somebody over. Snuka there. Janetti, of course, is there. Papa Shango. Oh, yeah. Papa Shango. Charles Wright was only 30 at this time. Another interesting gimmick, of course, at this period. The Repo Man is also still there. Don't forget about the Repo Man. Come a long way from Demolition Smash. But, so Martel's still there, another good worker that you have in the mix. We mentioned Shawn Michaels, Tatanka, the Barbarian, the Berserker. If anyone wants a push for the Berserker, let me know. That guy was interesting. Of course, the Texas Tornado, too. Kerry Von Erich is there. Kerry Von Erich, only 31 at this time. So, he's an interesting one, I think, in terms of our booking. And the Warlord, also there in this period as well. So, I really like this roster. I think this is one that's, you've got a lot of interesting talent here. Of course, you've got the Barry Horowitzes of the world, kind of on the undercard here and everything. But I don't know. Come on, what's Herc doing down here? Herc should be, although Herc has ice cold momentum and is angry, so that's probably why he's not being pushed too well right now. But, so you've got a lot of guys down here, too, where, and obviously I'm recording this actually, of course, Virgil. Rest in peace to Virgil. But Virgil's also here, coming off the stuff with the $1 Million Man in 91. So, this was, there's, again, I think this roster is very interesting at this period of time, and I think this is kind of a fun period to book, knowing that we do have the starting point, as we said, of, having a vacant world championship. What do we do with the 1992 Royal Rumble? Do we do the same thing they did in reality and make it for the world title? Or do we do something different? And, there's a lot of creative ideas, I think, building towards, like we said, not just the short term with the Rumble, WrestleMania, what do we do with the title, but also looking ahead. 1993, Raw is introduced. You have the up-and-coming stars like Brett, Michaels, all those guys. How do we kind of navigate that? And what are going to be some of the similarities? What will be the differences? That's what make these kind of saves fun for me. And, of course, we've got the retro style here, too. And that is something where I appreciate the 90s as well. So, all right, guys, there you go. That's the introduction to our 1992 WWF series here in TEW. And, let me know what you think. What are you most excited about with this save? Who are some of the guys you want to see maybe get some shine here in this particular series? Who should we go out and sign, maybe to add to the roster, although it's already a pretty large roster for a company that only has a 1-hour TV show every week. So we're not get too carried away with signing a bunch of people unless they fit the storyline. But a lot of ideas to work with here as we start this WWF 1992 series. So be sure to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Appreciate you guys watching as always. There's a lot of stuff on the channel. WWE 2024, WWE 2021, that's the one with 100-plus episodes. You can go check that one out. Like I said, if you want to just have some fun with the WCW 1998 one, you can, but it's only 15 episodes. We didn't get too far in it. AEW series, we got about 20-something episodes into that one. If you like the Cornell-verse, we got a TCW series that is just rocking and rolling right now. 30-something plus episodes into that one. So, a lot of fun stuff here on the channel. And, again, you never know. I may decide to, do another kind of retro-type save here at some point as well. But appreciate you guys watching as always. And on the next episode of our WWF 1992 save, it will be Superstars of Wrestling for Week 1 in January.